Okay, so I have quite a few questions, but I'm going to give you the chance first. Okay, we have a keen person towards the back over here. If you could let us know who you are, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name's Kudu Plessis from BHP. I have a question for you on open ecosystems. So we heard a lot about different platforms, and as quite often a consumer, we hear a lot about just buy this platform and it will solve the world's problems for you. But you put up the ecosystem. I'd like to hear what each of you are doing in opening up the platform so that we can access those parts that may work best within our businesses.
Who'd like to kick off?
Do you want me? Sure, I can take it from Schneider's perspective. So our EcoStruxure platform that I talked about basically is an architecture. In essence, it's comprised of 3 layers. At the very lowest level, you've basically got smart devices. And we have, just to put it in reality, 47% of our revenues come from connected products. So it's a real product that's actually connected to the Ethernet. The second layer is what we call our edge control software. And this is software that you can use to not just manage Schneider devices, by the way. You could manage some of our competitor devices as well with the same software. And the final layer, which is really our apps and analytics cloud layer, is our software automation tool. So whether you take Invensys or APC or any one of the companies that we bought and integrated into Schneider, it's all open standards and can be used across any technology. We're very much part of the whole open compute platform. We're setting the trend in terms of standards. So certainly, get one and try it out, because I can tell you it's definitely open.
Jens?
Yeah, aircraft industry is a little bit of a special field on that in terms of openness. We're thinking about that in that sense, that in an industrial environment, we need to work together much closer on that sense with our suppliers, with our partners. So that we need to do in a complete open and transparent way. No doubt on that. Now, will it be 100% completely open in terms of public? I think there are limits in terms of security and safety of the product and of the aircraft itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I didn't say it, but our CEO Mr. Denner is strongly pushing for open standards, and for example, OPC-UA, the Industry 4.0 standard for communication, where you have security inside. We are pushing for it. We are working on the next level of field bus, of automation field bus, called TSN. We have defined protocol for machine data exchange called the PPMP protocol, also open. We collaborate with the Eclipse Foundation. So it's the base of our work. We don't lock in our customers, and we encourage everybody to use open standards.
But I would like to build on the point you raised, because I think it's absolutely essential. And that's why you have public and private.
Yeah.
So even, and by the way, they can both be open, but you can restrict the data to a certain group of users versus others. And we certainly are working very heavily on the cybersecurity side to ensure that the connectivity and the firewalls through which the data is passing, and obviously the product hardening itself. You've probably heard of Achilles 2.0. We're certainly supporting that as well. So not everything is public and the Amazon cloud, but it certainly is open.
Actually, can I just pick up on cybersecurity, because you all mentioned it, and you're talking about mission critical, possibly life and death applications here. And although I've heard you all acknowledge how important it is, I mean, how realistically do you think that you can manage security issues to the point that you're confident?
I think we need. There's no obviously scenario say in that sense say we manage that a little, or we try to do our best. We have to manage that, because when you think about something which is as well often linked to Industry 4.0, which is 3D printing. We're not talking about that today, but that gives a new opportunity of using data, make a complete different design, bring it into product, having these kind of printing machine and print a product. Now, these kind of printers are available relatively low budget, and you can produce parts of that, which looks from outside really like a like an official OEM part. Now inside it might look completely different and not fulfilling the requirements. So we need to find ways to manage that and to ensure that these parts, which are don't find its way into the product line, into I will say in service, something which is on an aircraft where it should not be, and that is something which is absolutely mandatory, because having an issue in that area is definitely killing the approach of end-to-end data management and as well transparency of data.
Yeah. And I would just add on that a couple of things, I guess. You know, in some ways, the digitization of where we are is really helpful vis-a-vis security. So if you think about a time when we didn't have the transparency and availability, things were happening, you couldn't even do anything about it. You know, so it happened, and then you had to react. I think now, with so much predictive monitoring, you cannot imagine the number of threats that are avoided. Right, so I used to be in the telecoms industry, and let me tell you, whether it's BT or Colt or any of these companies, you are being attacked at all times. The question is, what are your systems able to do, and what are your people able to do in advance of being actually facing a threat? And then do you have the business continuity plans in place once a threat has occurred to be able to recover? And I think it's all of the above. And I can tell you, data centers today, you can actually turn off an entire data center and not lose any data, you know. So I feel pretty secure in this world. I mean, I think it is what it is. You know, we have to deal with where we are, and each one of us, and certainly with the heritage our companies bring, you know, we've not been around for a couple of years, we've been around for a long, long time, and invest an enormous amount of money in R&D just to keep us safe.
And we also have a very strong corporate IT department. I cannot remember the amount of attacks we have per day. It was also something like you mentioned, and they put very strict rules. Yeah. Also, when we speak about controllers with an Ethernet connection in the plant, there are different zones that you have to respect. A red zone, an orange zone, a green zone. A red zone then is life-dependent machinery, and then you have no connectivity at all. Yeah, and you have to put in internal firewalls. So there's a very strong IT security in the background. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question from the audience? Okay, we have two over here and then another two, so I'm going to take the two over here, one after the other, so we'll hear both questions and then take the answers, and then we have a question in the middle and a question over here to follow.
Yeah, hi there. Phil Wilson from Supply Chain in PepsiCo. My question for Tanuja, you talked about uncertain ROI as a barrier. Have you got any more advice or thoughts that you can share with us on that? Because that's certainly a barrier in our business.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly hire consultants who'll do it better than me. But no, but let me give you a couple of ideas on that, right? I mean, I think, and some of it, you know, we as manufacturers have to help you through this process. And I know that we often aren't doing that, right? So when we come in and talk to you, we've got to be able to look at your systems, do some audits to really try and understand. We do conduct something, as an example, we have something that we call our MP4 audit. And we have a small consulting team that actually goes in and works with our clients to understand what they've got in the legacy environment. Because it is what it is. You have legacy environments. What are you going to do with it? And then we actually design an architecture that's going to work for you in a pilot environment, like you mentioned as well, so that we can actually test something in a sort of TVDA-like model before we even get out there and do anything with it. And I can tell you with energy, just taking energy, there is absolute deliverables available from small projects that you can use in order to be able to generate energy improvements, right? You can put in, for example, you don't have to put in a fancy dandy building management automation system with all bells and whistles. You know, you can put in a few things in your building that will allow you to actually monitor and measure the energy consumption. And once you make that available to your employees, guess what? They start suddenly realizing what they're doing, and they will stop using the energy the way they used to. So you can go from simple HMI, little controlling things as, you know, a screen in your office that shows how the data is being utilized to something much bigger than that. And I think I would really advise bite-sized chunks, right? Bite-sized chunks, small process, confined, try it out, it will pay off. And I mean, you probably have way more experience on having done that at Airbus, you know, possibly.
Yeah, we're doing that in some areas, and what you just mentioned is, I like that, is there's no one big bang or everything is greenfield. There's a lot of brownfield activities we need to do, and it's a step-by-step approach, and that's as well the most successful way to learn about that, to see if something is really paying back in the sense as we thought it was paying back, or is there something more to do and to improve on that.
So there was another question over there. Tanuja, your microphone needs...
This doesn't stay on. It totally refuses.
You have my sympathy.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Hi. It's Gash Buller. I represent a tech company. We hear a lot about interoperability. We hear about a lot of cooperation. But in reality, of course, shareholders will dictate that profits have got to stay with Siemens, with Bosch, with Schneider and so on. How do we get over this issue of true interoperability? Because people like Airbus, not just Airbus, everybody's trying to look at this connectivity. The big issue about productivity is the fact that there are so many disparate systems and they're more likely to break down. So do we see a future where we see a dominant player come out, or do we see some form of true collaboration where you slice up the markets and take up certain sectors?
Great question.
Ooh.
Do you want to...
Go ahead, Tanuja.
Wow, that could be like 2 hours. You know, we could spend 2 hours on that question. I just don't think there is a mecca of interoperability. You know, we've lived through how many years in tech and we've not still got there. But on the other hand, we've had massive improvements in collaboration more than ever before. So, you know, I don't think there is the old seamless, perfect, beautiful world. It just doesn't exist. What I do think, though, is that we recognize, certainly, and I can speak for Schneider, we recognize that we're not going to do this alone. We absolutely do. So we're very, very good in our areas of expertise, and we're not very good in areas that are not ours. So as an example, we partnered with Intel because we needed Intel's, you know, field programmable devices, arrays, in order to be able to power our sensors and how they were going to actually provide data. Or we partnered with Microsoft because Microsoft's Azure is where we actually use their cloud in order to be able to perform. So I actually think the way interoperability will evolve is not purely down at a standards level. I mean, I think that's work that is in play, but actually it's how companies use each other's technologies and allow our R&D borders to actually blur. And increasingly, I'll give you an example of BT, which is where I was before, down in Martlesham. I mean, go and have a look. You know, it's not just BT, it's 50 suppliers around BT doing incredible work together. So that's my view. I think it's just working together to try and find ways to, you know, fit our products, and it's being done today.
Yeah, and sorry.
And I think it's something where there's we're coming from, we have a brownfield environment. So we have, for example, in the production system, we have Siemens control units, I'm saying not everywhere, but more or less. Sorry. We have Dassault as a for the CATIA system. So for sure, we're starting with these partners, and partnership is for me using, I will say, ensuring a win-win situation both directions. That's finally the most important. If it's recognized that I have a partner, if not want to mention names, something, okay, I do something with you, but I make everything public. Yeah? Sorry, that's not the intention. Yeah, and because maybe the philosophy of that company is everything what is shared with industrial partner is automatically become public. Then it's difficult to set up partners. And then another way, if generating partnership is by projects. Talking about a holistic picture, getting a common understanding of that holistic picture, but then saying this is a project, let's work on that, cut the elephant in pieces, and see how it is going. If it's going good, make the next piece, next chunk a little bit bigger. So this is I would say, a simple, practical way to develop partnership, and partnership is a lot about trust, and to generate trust out of these kind of projects and with this approach.
Yeah, of course, when you look to consumer markets, you have the four big players. Yeah, I don't need to mention them. And in the industrial world, we don't believe that there will be such dominant players dominating the market like in the consumer world. And there will be a place for everybody, and there will be expertise by Bosch or by Schneider, so everybody has is reason to exist and to further exist and to collaborate with each other, to bring the strengths together, to bring the customer the best solution. So we don't see such a dominant thing in our world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's just every project that we work on, you know, there's always third-party suppliers involved. I mean, we've got an incredible breadth and depth, but we can't possibly do everything that a customer would like. And then there's no choice for us to win these projects. So we are incented and motivated to partner, because if we don't, we're not going to win these projects and these opportunities. Especially when you get into the world of smart cities, you know, I mean, that's just going to be really interesting to resolve. And
a nice example from collaboration from our side, for example, we are producing also control units for your cars. Yeah, and 2 weeks ago we announced a partnership with NVIDIA, one of the leading graphic processor suppliers, who's also very strong in artificial intelligence and neuronal network, to make to bring artificial intelligence into your car. Yeah, so here we partner with NVIDIA because they have a strong technology base. We don't develop the processor on our own.
Yeah. There was a lady halfway down on this side. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Anna Hoffman from Microsoft. I listened at least two of you talking about the people's challenge related to Industry 4.0 projects. So I'd like to know which are the challenges you are facing with people, and which are the projects or the actions you are addressing to deal with it.
Who'd like to start on that? Hans Michael, why don't we get you to start?
Yeah, you know, we are producing in a country where we have high salaries. Yeah, so we need to find a way to keep the people in our plants, to keep their work. Yeah, to have the workers in Germany or in France or in the UK, and not to move the production to low-cost countries. And we can only do this by increasing the performance. So we need to support the workers, as I was showing it with the workers' assistance systems, to increase their performance, to support them better. Yeah, Schneider you mentioned an impressive number of people running away to get information somewhere to fix a problem. Yeah, we need to give them a guidance system not to run away, to save this time, to be more productive. Yeah, on a tablet or on another device. So these kind of things, easy things, support them with the language, support them with their workplace, are challenging points that we are doing at the moment.
I asked Hans Michael earlier if they had trouble recruiting, because he was saying that the factory where he works is practically in the mountains. It's like in the middle of nowhere in some tiny, you called it a town, it sounded like a village to me. And Hans Michael was saying that they attract all the sports dudes, everyone who wants to kind of rock climb or do something outdoorsy, so that you said you have no problem at all.
No, we are in the very remote locations, but we have no problem at all. People like to work with us because this plant with the ABS system is almost in the middle of the mountains in the Alps. They like to do mountain biking and skiing in winter time, so no issues on that. Yeah, and they like the environment, of course, working there, and they're very proud of their achievements.
So Jens, what kind of people issues have you got?
I think the work environment can really change. So I mentioned the cobot system. The cobot system, when we put something in place into the production, it is a robot which is working together with a human being. So our people are today trained for installing something into an aircraft. They are not trained to maintain a robot system. So when we want to use that system efficiently with the cost which is behind the system, as well with the labor cost we have in Europe overall, we need to have workers which are trained to maintain as well the cobot system and work together with them. Not treat them as a classical robot system what you saw on the picture with the automotive line, where you have maintenance guys. They know very well how to maintain that system. Now, these workers in aircraft at least, they're working on the aircraft, they're installing something, and they have a robot system which is their, in brackets, colleague, and they have to take care about him as well. Not to call for a maintenance, wait 10 or even longer minutes, then someone else can come and repair. And that needs a complete different set of skills of that people than we have it today in our plants.
I'd raise maybe two additional points. I absolutely agree with what's been said. I think two. One is, if I look at Schneider, we've got people who've been with Schneider 50 plus years, and that's all they've done, And I think it's super important for us to not just be bringing in a whole cohort of new people. I mean, of course, diversity is important, and we need to do that. But I think, how do we get this fantastic set of engineers and people who've been working with us for over 50 years up and understanding how they're going to adapt themselves to this new environment, right? Because that's going to be probably key. The other thing I think is apprenticeships. I think we've lost a little bit of the way on apprenticeships. So, we certainly hire a number of graduates. By the way, I'm proud to say that our last cohort was 50% women, which was great. But, we need to go back into the apprenticeship program, and actually we're going to get taxed anyway, aren't we, for this? So let's get some use out of this money that we're going to have to pay, and let's get apprenticeships back on the radar. And probably the only other thing I will make a point is around diversity, because I do think that, and it's both gender as well as age, I do think that some of our industries are not necessarily these exciting place of the web giants and the ones that have market caps in excess of any one of our plants are worth, right? But I think, how do we get people out there, the millennials, interested in the core R&D and manufacturing world that actually is the bedrock of what we do on a daily basis, and that's a challenge. It's a brand challenge. It's how do we brand ourselves to be more digital? Yeah. I'm sure the Bosch and Airbus have the same.
You can do, for example, stuff that we do. You can do hackathons, to make them attracted for technology. Yeah. 2 days hackathon, hack my Jaguar and make it improve the entertainment system. So we do such kind of things, for example, to attract the younger generation. Yeah.
And there's another point in terms of skill development, so the opportunities we have with, for example, our designers. Classical aircraft designers, they're passionate on aircraft, so performance of the aircraft, fuel burn, drag, and these kind of things. Industrial is not so much, which is in their natural DNA. So there's something really we need to work on, that when I'm getting aeronautical engineers from the university, they're very good in explaining me how to avoid drag counts in the aircraft, how to improve the fuel burn, and all these kind of things. They have very little skills on how that all can be combined with an industrial setup. So that is as well something we need to work on, so that we have trained people which are having these end-to-end thinking of design of the classical engineering part of an aircraft and the industrial part to get that in a combined version. And that is something it starts in the education system of the university.
Thank you. And then there was one question in the middle somewhere here. Are you still waiting for a question? Otherwise, we've got one towards the front again. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, it's Justin Cunningham again from Eureka Magazine. Fantastic presentations from all of you, and thank you very much for those. I wanted to pick up on a point about the supply chain sort of impact and comments made about productivity here in the UK. I think one of the issues is if you're an SME and you're looking at Industry 4, you're very much going to hedge your bets if you choose one technology over another to get your product smart ready. So if I want to do business with Airbus, I'm probably going to buy into Siemens and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's sort of fair to say or not. I'm sorry for using you as an example there. But what advice would you have for UK specifically SMEs that are looking at Industry 4, scratching their heads, looking at all the possibilities of different things to go down? How can they kind of see the wood from the trees?
Who'd like to take that?
I think that's one of the challenge to set standards. I think it was mentioned in your presentation that standards are essential. And then we need to support that. There are in industrial environments, there are some standards available. When I'm looking now into something which comes out of like the Silicon Valleys, these ideas, what out of these ideas will become the world standard of the industrial system? That's a little bit of guessing, and I don't think there is a clear answer on that today, saying this is the one, this is defining the new standard for data communication and so on. That's a challenge. It's independent of UK or whatever NetCo. The business is transnational, and this setup of standards is a transnational business, and that's definitely a challenge.
I would say, I don't think all of the suppliers that have been here and have been in the business for a while, and even some of the newer disruptive, let's call it, suppliers that are entering the market, I think we all do work on some common themes, right? So, I mean, as an example, Ethernet is at the core of every single thing we do and has been since the 1960s, right? So, BACnet, using certain types of, Zigbee as a platform. I mean, there's lots of different individual, to your point, standards or archetypes or however you want to call these things that we all absolutely run R&D against. So I don't think you have to eventually you have to make choices on the supplier, of course, for I hope more reasons than standards. But I think that most of the suppliers in the space that we're talking about, be it food and bev or automotive or oil and gas or metals and mining or water, if you're looking at, waste loss management systems, we all subscribe to the same themes and protocols. Maybe that's the better word, protocols. And I think that's what you've got to think about, is you've got to think about as an SME, what am I trying to do? Don't worry about the technology. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? And then if I were to achieve this, how would I go about that? And then what are the technologies out there? And you can start with things that are super simple, and you don't have to make huge decisions 5 years into the future. Because no one has a crystal ball, we absolutely don't. But some of our roadmaps are, our roadmaps are not just a 2017 roadmap. I mean, we have roadmaps going out 5 years. And I'm sure that's the same with Bosch and yourself. And when we come speak to an Airbus, we can't just rock up and talk about 1 year, because there's no way you're going to partner with us on that basis. So I'd say it's deciding your requirements and then figuring out the protocols.
Also, I would underline, I don't know the SMEs in the UK, but I know the German ones, machine builders, small machine builders. Yeah. They are not actually using technology which is right now on the market. They stick to paradigms that are 5 or 10 years old. Yeah. One example, they have separated, or they see their excellence in mechanical engineering. Maybe electrics, okay, but software, who cares about software? Yeah, some guy will program it at the end. They think in silos, yeah, and that's old-fashioned. You have to, and as an SME, you have to break the silo thinking. You have to bring the people together. You have to use technology which is available on the market. Sometimes I feel like a preacher. I preach them what is available. They are not using it. Yeah, it's a pity somehow. So they have to overcome this hurdle to use it. And of course, as he said, try to use open standards, because then they can supply many companies, and try to use stuff which has a future. Yeah, try to engage with technology which is available, and even I know many machine builders not taking the know-how from young engineers. Yeah, a young engineer comes with a know-how in MATLAB or maybe in Dassault, but they are using old-fashioned CAD and not using this know-how, because the decision makers are in their 50s, and the young engineer of the 20s cannot really fully appreciate this know-how. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. There was a lady at the front here with a question.
Hi, my name is Louise. I'm from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. I was just wondering, on the subject of skills development, how long do you think it will take to enable a culture change for young people to get to be excited about engineering and STEM subjects. And is there anything, do you think, that we can draw on from other countries where young people are more attracted to engineering and STEM subjects?
Great question.
I'd love to jump into that one. How long is it going to take? How long is a piece of string? You know, I think we're attacking this problem every day in the UK, by the way. I mean, one of the things that I find very interesting as a program is just become a STEM ambassador, you know. So a number of us in our various countries, whether it's personal or professional lives, we're spending time at universities, you know, going out to career fairs, talking to people about, you know, what we do and how we do it. And I think becoming a STEM ambassador is a great program. I also think we've got to turn engineering on its head. And I don't think this is just a STEM challenge. Anyway, I think, you know, hiring a history grad or a geography grad is as good as hiring an engineering grad, you know, because a young mind, you can train a young mind on various things, right? And you know, we run something called Energy University. It's open to anyone, by the way. Feel free to go on there. There are a lot of courses on there that you can train. So I think you can do, we are doing lots of things in the UK in particular. I mean, yes, certain countries, you know, I grew up in India, and engineering was a really core part of growing up in India, and it's not necessarily the case everywhere. But I do think, you know, it's down to families, schools, teachers, companies, peers, friends, to get people back. And you know, if I think about what attracted me to Schneider, it wasn't because it was an engineering company or an industrial company or because we have great products. It's because our mission is about energy being a basic human right. You know, I feel that everyone should have access to energy, which is why I work here. So we've got to find ways of taking our brands and not making them so nerdy, you know.
I like your
not that Airbus is ever. Nah.
I like your question there. In how long will it take? I think there is no point saying, okay, we have now a couple of years in front of us or a couple of months, and then we have reached a point where everything is fine. No, it will never stop. And it will never be, I would say, we will never have a situation and say, now we have a point reached, which is, I would say, somehow stable. So it started now. We need to continuously working on it, as just explained. And it is something which is an ongoing journey. And there is competition around the world. So the moment we say we have achieved it is the moment we have given up, because someone else will do the next step and will be again ahead. And that is, for me, something we need to do it. We need to start with the training. We need to go into the universities. We need to think about how an engineer is trained today. What is his background when he is leaving the university? How that can be further developed. And that's an ongoing business, and it needs to be done maybe more consciously and more pushy from the industry point of view, and to ensure that the engineers joining us, the young engineers, which can be then later better formed, but as well how I would say engineers which are 20 or even or 25 years in the company can further develop, because they have to work at least in Germany we have to work until 67. Yeah, so it is not that someone 25 years in a company is close to retirement. There's another 20 years normally to go. So how these people can be further trained and develop in this new Industry 4.0 requirements.
I do think with augmented reality and things, you know, today you can train so much more easily. You know, you don't have to know everything, because when you put that iPad up to whatever, you know, it actually gives you all the 3D diagrams, it gives you all the information, you connect to a fantastic bureau that gives you all this expert advice. So, you know, I think we have to learn differently, maybe, as well.
I think I'm an engineer myself, and many of my engineering students dropped out due to mathematics and physics. So make it easier. No, it's a joke. No. No, but I think in the UK you have great assets. You are the inventor of the Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi started a whole movement attracting pupils and students to use these little PC boards to create stuff. This maker scene, hackathon I was already mentioning. I don't know how long it will take, but you can also do small steps. So why not in the next Industry 4.0 summit, you make in the other half of the building, you make a hackathon. yeah, and attract young people also to come to this event. And I think then you will sparkle a fire that will burn, and then you will have more engineers. Yeah. The assets, I think, in the UK are great. For me, you are Raspberry Pi country. Yeah.
And just to follow up on that, because this is a subject very close to my heart as well. I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer for more than 30 years, and the percentage of women in engineering has not shifted in 30 years. So I'm very frustrated by how long it's taking. One of the things that I think is shifting these days is that people are beginning to describe engineering more in terms of the difference it can make in the world, rather than just in terms of the technology, and that is appeals to a slightly different audience. So the way that Tanuja is describing everyone's right to access to energy, some of those solving big world challenges, does appear to help attract more women into the fold, but it's maddening, absolutely maddening. It's a fantastic career for women. There's a lot of other minorities that we also need to get into engineering, so that we've got a good mix of people solving real world problems. So I wish I could see an instant solution, but I have to assume it's a really hard problem, otherwise we'd have cracked it by now. And I think it is. It's everything from parents and teachers and employers. We all need to be playing our part. But I would like to see it cracked soon, because we're going to have a big shortfall of engineers in the next few decades. So it's kind of urgent. If we're missing out on half the population, it's something we need to crack. Okay, another question here.
Yeah, I'm Balachandran from India. One curious question to all the panelists. One of you mentioned about legacy systems, connecting with legacy system, and looking at tier 2, tier 3, the SMEs, the massive amount of SMEs. Are there some conscious attempts to sensitize them and also help them in the connections? Because the assets that are logged are quite huge.
Yeah, when you have a legacy system, for example, and you want to connect it, you don't want to change the automation, for example, because maybe you don't have it's an old PLC, you don't have the PLC program anymore. You don't want to touch it because it was already certified. So then you bring in some connectors, as I shown it, that you put in some additional sensors, maybe have the possibility to read out data from the existing PLC, but don't touch the running system. So that's the easiest way to bring Ethernet down to legacy machines, from my perspective.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I gave you the example of the car washing company.
Yeah.
I mean, they had legacy PLCs that weren't Schneider. But we were able to drop some edge control boxes on there just to read the other PLCs. And plus, we were able to, using our experts, remotely monitor other PLCs as well. So I think using software and our edge devices or other people's edge devices, you can hook on to legacy and not have to change that necessarily. I mean, in the end, if the software is no longer valid, I think you should, because at some stage you're probably in a situation where you don't want to be on that anymore. But I do think you can. I mean, I'll give you an example of a piece of technology that I'm personally quite proud of at Schneider. Is we created something called Power Tag. Basically, it's a little thing that just drops onto your existing circuit breakers, which were not necessarily connected, and will pull data out. That's easy, right? You don't have to change your old stuff anymore. So I think that we are also trying as manufacturers to come up with ways increasingly where you can do that. And for SMEs, super important, but even for large companies.
Yeah, and I think we in the production we have always brownfield situation, so we cannot say we start completely new. It's simply impossible with the investment which we and the risk would be extremely high. And we have another issue or challenge, not call it an issue. It's a challenge. It's the certification of the product and the manufacturing system. Everything what we put into operation need to be certified and need to be certified against the certification rule to produce the aircraft. So adaptation in the way is just was planned for me is a natural part of the journey. Yeah? It cannot be that we have everywhere brand new shiny machine with the new standards. Certainly no one will pay for that. Second, it will not pay back. And third, in terms of risk for the company, it's not affordable.
Thank you. So we could probably fit one more question in before lunch. Okay, there's one right at the back there.
Hello, Ryan O'Regan from Intel. And Hans Michael, I think you might have given us an example already, but I'm curious to ask the panel about the approach and the use of AI and machine learning in an industrial context. So this is a technology that's been available for some years in, say, digital security and other fields, but I think that it's something that's we're starting to hear more in an industrial context. So I'd be curious to hear what the panel have to say about whether they see machine learning and artificial intelligence approaching the industrial sector.
Yeah, as I said, this leading Industry 4.0 plant is now getting knowledge out of data, yeah, and trying to predict, and they are looking into using artificial intelligence and how they could use it in the best way, but they are not using it yet in a production environment. They are just having the models, having all the data, but we are just at the beginning to explore the possibilities of artificial intelligence in a real production. Yeah, that's just the first step at the moment. So, and Industry 4.0 is also not a switch that you turn, yeah, and now you're Industry 4.0. So it's an incremental approach, as we said. So there are Industry 3.6, yeah, and exploring now these possibilities, and I'm looking forward what they are going to find out once they really apply this technology.
Yeah. So just one last question. Tanuja, you mentioned Brexit. I feel I have to pick up on that. So I'm interested in kind of your take on Brexit and how it might affect manufacturing, not just in the UK, but in Europe or elsewhere. And I am going to ask you two for a quick view as well, but I'll start with you since you raised it.
I mean, the good thing about where we are now, I feel, is there's certainty in what we're going to do. And I personally thought the PM wrote a fantastic letter. If anyone's not read it, you should, because it was a very collaborative letter, and I think a letter that pointed out some of the big issues that we face as companies, which are around really people. You know, we have people that are working here. We'd like them to keep working here. We would have a major skills shortage if we weren't able to do that. And I'm confident that we will find a way to address those issues. I guess what we do see potentially is with the pound where it is, manufacturing could be a very interesting space again for us. And I don't mean, the type of manufacturing that's moved to Asia, but I think the more value-added manufacturing. So I think there's an opportunity for us in the UK to actually increase the amount of exports that we do on the back of where we are with respect to the sterling. But I do think the risk on the other side that we face is, and that's something like a multinational like ours really worries about, is with the currency drop last year, our costs have just gone through the roof because we have a global supply chain. And the issue with that is, guess what? We're going to end up in some sort of inflationary environment. No choice to do that. You've seen what Apple has done and Microsoft have done. So we've got to balance cost and our raw material escalations and all of the above. That's just something which we as businesses have to manage. I think for me the biggest issue is around people, in particular with regards to Brexit, and hoping that we will have trade agreements in place that will ensure that the UK is still very much part of trading in Europe, right? Because that's something we can't exit.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm from Airbus. So Airbus is a European company, and so the success of this company is coming out that Four-Nation in the 70s found its way to set up this company to set up a competitive aircraft against the US market. And so the number one on the single out of 50% of the market is a European company, it's Airbus. So for such a person, I have a German passport, but I don't feel German. I'm European. I have a French boss, Spanish boss, and the 25 years in this company. So something like the decision on Brexit is taken. The vote is done. It is as it is. For me, saying hope there is finally the impacts will be as low as possible. I don't want to start guessing here, but from a company point of view, in terms of Airbus, it is really the success of the company is a European approach. Yeah. So let's see what happens now the next 2 years' time.
Thank you. Hans Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, from my personal point of view, I cannot speak as Bosch here. I think it's a pity that what happened, and However, I still hope that, as you said, free trade and that there will be some regulations that will not limit our activities as global players. And I really hope, I learned today, I was not aware of this, that you are behind in productivity. Yeah, increasing productivity saves jobs in the UK, as the same way it was in Germany in our plants. So I really hope that you take this chance that technology gives you and increase your productivity, keep the people here, and still make free trade with us. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to wind it up on that. I've heard some very big themes emerging this morning. A huge theme around partnership, true interoperability and collaboration. That's come up again and again. People's come up frequently, standards, cybersecurity, diversity, and actually quite a few times where SMEs fit in the overall chain, and even how the industrial strategy is going to pick up SMEs. So there's some quite consistent themes emerging. So I'd like you to join me in thanking an excellent panel and for your individual presentations as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.